Being bold means having the guts to try something new, to push boundaries, to move forward, even when no one else can see what you see. What you get from me isn't textbook theory, it's real world, in the dirt experience. Failure isn't something to fear, it's a tool. It's the best damn teacher you ever had. Because it's not about never falling, it's about how many times you're willing to stand back up. Hi, and welcome to my course, How to Start Your Own Business. No unnecessary nonsense, just pure action. I'm Steenstra, and I'm not here to fill your head with theories and pretty plans. We're gonna get real. We're gonna get practical. And yeah, we're gonna make some mistakes, because that's how you're gonna learn. This course isn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It's not about endless planning or searching for some magic formula. It's about rolling up your sleeves, taking risks, and daring to do things before you're ready. Because let me tell you, if you wait for everything to be perfect, you'll be watching others take off while you're still sitting and wondering. We're going to cut the crap. You're going to learn how to get started today, even if you don't have anything figured out yet. You embrace failure, learn from it, and grow faster than your competition. I share my own journey, the heights, the lows, the time I fell flat on my face, because those moments, my friends, those are the best teachers you'll ever have. This isn't just a course about building a business. It's about building you. You develop a mindset that pushes your dream big, take risks, and act. But by the end of this journey, you won't just have the tools to start a business. You have the guts, the resilience, and the clarity to make it happen. So if you're ready to stop overthinking and start doing, let's get going. Because the best way to learn is by doing, and by failing, dusting yourself off, and come back stronger. Are you ready to dream, to dare, and to do? You see, this entire course is built on a simple belief. In my belief, entrepreneurship is not about having the answers. It's about having the guts to take action when you have none. It's about resilience, creativity, and the ability to get back up again and again and again. And I believe that anyone can become an entrepreneur if they're willing to let go of the fear of failing and embrace the power of doing. Now, you might be wondering, why should I listen to this guy? Or even, why should I listen to this old guy with his gray hairs? And that's fair enough. But I can tell you, I've been in the trenches. I've built companies, I scaled them, and yeah, I crashed a few too. I've seen the startup hustle, the moments when you think everything's falling apart. And I've also been at a table with some of the biggest companies in the world, like Samsung and HTC and a dozen you heard of. I've been there, across all levels, from the scrappy beginnings to the big league boardrooms. I've coached entrepreneurs, watched them take off, and yes, I've seen them fall. And every one of those experiences have taught me something valuable, something I can pass on to you. What you get from me isn't textbook theory, it's real world, in the dirt experience. It's the wisdom that comes with falling flat on your face and standing up stronger. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to help you discover what you're capable of when you strip away the excuses. We focus on how you can think big, act small, and turn ideas into something real, something that matters. We'll push the limits, challenge beliefs, and laugh at our mistakes, because learning without a bit of fun isn't worth it. So if you're ready to take the belief, this raw, unfiltered, do before you die mentality, and turn it into action, you're in the right place. Let's get started, and let's make it count. Let's talk about the big why. Not just why you want to be an entrepreneur, but why the world needs you to succeed. You see, your why isn't just about your personal dreams, the house, the car, or the freedom of being your own boss. That's all well and good, but it's not enough. The real power lies in your big why, the reason your success matters to the world. People don't become successful and wealthy just because they want to. They succeed because they add something valuable, something the world benefits from. So your big why is your contribution to society. It's the reason people want to support you, follow you, and even become your biggest fan. It's what makes them care about your journey. And let me tell you, when things get tough, and they will, the big why is what keeps you standing. There will be times when your personal motivation fails you, when you feel like there's nothing left in the tank. But the big why, that fire inside of you, is what keeps burning, even when you're exhausted. It will make people rally around you. And when you're down, because they believe in what you're doing. I've seen my fair share of setbacks. I've been scammed out of hundreds, even thousands, even millions by people I trusted. People I saw as family. I survived the crashes of 2000 and 2008. I've gone from having millions in the bank to literally having only 68 cents to my name overnight. And I'm not the only entrepreneur who's been there. Imagine Richard Branson himself. He is the same, yet he was on the edge of bankruptcy more times than you can imagine. And in those moments, what kept him and what kept me just standing was the big why. It wasn't just the drive to succeed for ourselves. It was to believe in something bigger, something that mattered. And it was the community that believed in the same vision that gave us the reason to get up and fight again. So I want you to dig deep, very deep, and find that big why. Not just why you want to do this, but why it matters. Why should the world care about your success? That's the question. When you find the answer, you have something no setback can take from you. You have a community of people who believe in it just as much as you. So get ready to discover your big why. It will be your fuel, your fire, and your support network when times get tough. Let's go even deeper into the big why. Let me start by telling you, stop looking outside for answers. Don't look at what's trendy, what the market says, or what seems like surefire business opportunities. Look inside. What keeps you up at night? What makes you look to throw yourself into the fire to make a change in this world? If you had all the money and resources you could ever need, what problem would you solve? What would you fix? What makes you feel warm inside when you think about making a difference? That's where your big why starts. It's not about just another business, just another tool, or just another product. It's about impact. It's about creating something that doesn't just make people's lives more easy, but changes things for the better. If you've got already a business idea, now think about how that idea can solve something bigger, something meaningful. And if you don't have a business idea yet, start there. Start with the problem. Start with your passion, and then think about what kind of business could contribute to solving the problem. Let me give you an example of what happens when you don't have a big why. Once upon a time, a group of smart guys invested everything they had, and trust me, it was a lot of money, into making an online tool for financial calculations for startups. They thought they were solving a big problem that many startups have, and actually they were right. But do you know what? It was just a tool, a calculator. It helped people do things a bit more easily, but that's it. And guess what? When the product was ready, they were stunned to find that they had no customers and no investors were biting. Why? Because there was no big why, no bigger mission, nothing that would make people rally behind it. They made something functional, but it wasn't meaningful. It didn't add anything other than a bit of convenience. And sure, solving practical problems is great, but not enough to ignite people's passion, not enough to make them follow you, invest in you, or fight for you. Now look at Tesla. They weren't just making another car. Tesla was about something bigger. It was about sustainability through electric vehicles. And whether you agree with it or not, they had a big why, and people rallied behind it. People wanted to be part of that vision for the future. That's why Tesla blew up. That is why it became one of the fastest growing car brands in history. And take the smart car, another example. It wasn't just about a new car model. It had a big why. It was about creating a small, efficient, eco-friendly solution for crowded urban environments. And again, there was something more into it, something people could get behind. You understand? So here's what I want you to do. Stop searching for opportunities out there. Stop chasing for trends. Start looking inside. What do you care about enough to fight for? Even when things get tough, what contribution can you make to the world? That's what people want to see. That's why and when they will support you. And that's what keeps your fire burning when you run out of motivation. If you're going to build something, make it count, make it meaningful, make it matter. That's how you find your big why. And that's how you make sure you've got something that's bigger than just a business. It's a purpose, and trust me, when things get tough, and they will get tough, that big why is what will keep you going. Now that you looked deep, really deep into yourself and figured out what you want to contribute, it's time to do something about it. Let me tell you this. This is where most people mess up. They think they need to solve the entire problem right away with the best possible solution they can dream of. But that's not how real change starts. Let's say your big why is to solve the water shortage in the Sahara. All right, and it's quite ambitious, and I hope that's not your plan, but let's run with it. So maybe your idea is to dig a channel from the Nile to the Sahara, and then charge a small fee for anyone who's using that water. And in theory, it's doable. Maybe it could even be profitable. But if you want to make that happen, every business book out there is going to tell you to write a detailed business plan, to do a feasibility study, pitch to investors, and so on. And do you know what I say? Bullshit. If you really want to make it happen, here's what you do. You buy a shovel, book a ticket to Cairo, and start digging. Yes, I said it, start digging. And before you tell me that's crazy, hear me out. You're not going to solve the entire problem on day one. You're going to take action, see where it leads, and learn along the way. And when you're there with your shovel, you're going to run into obstacles. You're going to discover things that no business plan could predict. And you're going to meet people who might actually want to help because they see your vision, the dedication. Now, just to be clear, I don't want a horde of aspiring entrepreneurs invading Cairo with shovels. So please don't do that. But you get my point. Stop waiting. Stop trying to plan out every step perfectly. Start with something small, something real, something you can do today. You see, the art of just starting is about harnessing the power of now. Not when everything is ready, not when the stars align, but now. Whatever your big why is, find the first small action you can take action on and do it. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because the truth is, the perfect plan doesn't exist. The only way to make progress is start moving, to get your hands dirty, and figure it out along the way. And when you start, you learn things that no amount of planning could have taught you. You find people who resonate with your big why and want to help. And you discover that the hardest part isn't the doing, it's just starting. So forget about making it perfect. Forget about all those fancy plans and PowerPoint presentations. Just start. Grab that metaphorical shovel and make the first dig. Because the only way to turn that big why into reality is to take the first step. It doesn't matter if it's small, messy, or even ridiculous. The first action that gets you out of the dream phase and into digging. And trust me, you're going to feel more alive than ever when you do. So what's your shovel? What's the first thing you're going to do today to make your vision real? So you understand my point. The best way to figure out if you can do something and if it's going to work is to actually start doing. But here's where the art comes in. It's not about taking the biggest leap. It's about taking the smallest step you can manage. What's the one little thing you can learn or the one small action you can take today that moves you closer to solve that problem? When you have a big why in mind, ask yourself, what is the smallest, most practical thing I can do right now that brings me closer to that solution? Because let me tell you about the time I founded my later internationally operating advertising agency. I was just 21, and back then, my big why was about merging design and development to create a city guide. A guide that could make people who didn't have the money to travel experience a city. And you have to imagine, this was the early 90s. And design and development were totally separate worlds. And let's not forget, there was no internet like we know today. It was really a pretty big idea at that time. But I couldn't program to save my life. And I had no money to hire anyone. So what could I do? What was the smallest step I could take? Well, I wrote a note. And yeah, back then we used paper notes. And I put it on the bulletin board of the university in Amsterdam. 50 developers wanted to join a revolutionary project for free. And you know, a week later, I had 30 developers, each willing to work 2 days a week for free, just like that. And the point is, I didn't wait until I had the money, the skills, or even a solid plan. I figured out the smallest possible action I could take that might move me forward, and I took it. And that's what I want you to do. Stop worrying about having all the answers. Start thinking about what's right in front of you. What's the first tiny step that gets you closer to your big why? Because here's the secret. Those small steps, they add up. They create momentum. They open doors. And when you start moving, you'll find opportunities. You meet people who want to help, and suddenly that big, impossible dream starts to feel a whole lot more achievable. So what's your version of putting a note on a bulletin board? And what's the first thing you can do today to make progress on your vision? Take that smaller step and watch what happens next. Now let's talk about something that might sound a little bit strange at first. You have to already be an entrepreneur before you can actually become one. Confusing? Let me explain. Most people think you become an entrepreneur when you start a business, when you register with the Chamber of Commerce and get a fancy title. But here's the truth. Being an entrepreneur isn't about a piece of paper or owning a company. It's about your mindset. It's about how you think, how you solve problems, and how you see the world around you. Entrepreneurship starts here, in your head, long before you sign any papers or launch any product or company. You have to believe that you're an entrepreneur. Why? Because when you believe it, you start acting like one. You see opportunities where others see obstacles. You take calculated risks. You make decisions that lead rather than follow. It's this mindset that turns you into an entrepreneur long before any official title does. Think about it this way. I started a lot of business in my life. Some succeeded, some failed. But let me ask you this. If I don't have a business right now, does that mean I'm not an entrepreneur anymore? Of course not. I'm an entrepreneur, and I always have been, whether or not I currently own a company. Because it's not about having a business. It's about being one. It's about looking at the world and think, how can I make this better? It's about being proactive, finding solutions, and believing in your ability to create something valuable. Whether you're working in a 9-to-5 job, freelancing, or just dreaming up the next idea, you can still be an entrepreneur. It's about how you approach every challenge, how you look at every opportunity, and how you're willing to jump in and make things happen. So right now, if you start acting like the entrepreneur you want to become, don't wait for a company registration to tell you what you already know inside. Take on challenges, make decisions, take that risk. Start now with what you have and where you are, because the only way to become an entrepreneur is to be one today, not someday in the future. Forget about those labels. Forget about those titles. I will tell you about 11 traits that might help you to become this entrepreneur right now. 11 tips, 11 things that can start working for you right now. And let me tell you, these aren't fluffy theories or things you wait to do once you have a company. No, these are actions and the mindset you need to start adopting now, today. Because if you think you can't be an entrepreneur until the day you register your business, you got it all wrong. Here's how. Number 1, be a problem solver. Entrepreneurs are born from their ability to solve problems. You see something that's broken, something that could be better, and instead of waiting for somebody else, you fix it. Reed Hastings didn't start Netflix because he loved DVDs. He started it because he was pissed off late fees. He saw the problem, saw an opportunity to make it better, and acted. That's the mindset you need. You want to be an entrepreneur? Don't sit around whining what's wrong. Get up and do something about it. Number 2, no matter what, here's the deal. Real entrepreneurs never blame others, never. Period. Everything is always your responsibility. You were late, that's on you. You missed something, your fault. You didn't prevent an issue, yours own. True entrepreneurs take full ownership, and because they do, they're always in control. When you take your responsibility, you're the one who can make it better next time. No excuses, no blame, just action. Number 3, it's about curiosity, the core trait. Because I believe the single most important trait of an entrepreneur is curiosity. Without curiosity, you're dead in the water. Entrepreneurs are curious about everything. They want to know how things work, why things fail, how they can be improved. Think about Steve Jobs. He was obsessed with making technology not only functional, but beautiful, intuitive, and meaningful. It was his curiosity that drove him to question everything. He created products people didn't even know they needed until they saw them. Curiosity is what fuels innovation. If you're not curious, you're not an entrepreneur. Number 4, start a side hustle. Because you got a job? Good. Now, what's your side hustle? Real entrepreneurs don't wait for the perfect time. They start right now. For example, Jeff Bezos. He didn't quit his job on Wall Street overnight to start Amazon. He built on the side until it was time to go all in. A side hustle is where you train, where you make mistakes, where you learn how the game works. It's where you prove to yourself that you're an entrepreneur in real life, even when the world doesn't see you yet. Number 5, get comfortable with risk and uncertainties. Entrepreneurship is massive. It's uncertain. If you're waiting for guarantees, you're in the wrong game. Tony Robbins didn't become who he is today by waiting until everything was perfect. He threw himself into it, gave seminars, sometimes to just a handful of people. He treated every one of those sessions like his life depended on it. He embraced the risk of failure and kept moving forward. That's what you need to do. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's the only way you're going to grow. Number 6, experiment, experiment, experiment. If you're not experimenting, you're standing still. Stuart Butterfield didn't set out to build Slack. He was working on an entirely different project, in his case, an online game. And it was through experimenting, learning what worked and what didn't, that Slack was born. Entrepreneurs experiment constantly. They try, they fail, they adapt. It doesn't matter if the experiment is big or small. What matters is that you're always testing, always learning. So start experimenting your ideas. Throw them at the wall and see what sticks. Number 7, keep on growing. Invest in yourself. Entrepreneurs are never done learning. They invest in themselves because they know that their growth fuels the growth of everything else they do. Look at Oprah Winfrey. She didn't just wake up one day as the Oprah we all know. She spent years mastering her craft, honing her skills, growing as a communicator and as a human being. Number 8, build your network before you need it. Entrepreneurs understand the value of a strong network. They connect, they share, they build relationships long before they need anything from anyone. And when the time comes to launch something big, you need allies. And if you haven't been building those relationships, you're on your own. Start connecting now. Number 9, take initiative. You don't need permission to make an impact. Real entrepreneurs see something that could be improved and they do it. They don't wait for a boss or a green light. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a student, take initiative now. Act like an entrepreneur, someone who drives innovation within an organization. Where Steve Jobs talked about building great teams, he looked for people who acted like entrepreneurs within the company. That's what he called entrepreneurs. Number 10, don't wait for the right time. Create it. A lot of people waste time by waiting for the right time to act. The truth is, there is no right time. The stars down the line and life doesn't just hand you over an opportunity. At least, usually not. Entrepreneurs create their opportunity. They start before they're ready. Think again about Tony Robbins. He didn't wait until he was ready to inspire millions. He started small with what he had and grew from there. The right time is now. Start and figure out the details as you go. And number 11, get obsessed with added value. Entrepreneurs are obsessed with adding value. They don't just think what's in it for them. They think about how they can make someone else's life better. That's how Oprah became Oprah, for example. She wasn't just focused on being successful for herself. She wanted to add value for her audience, help them grow and connect with them with stories. If you focus on adding value to others, success follows naturally. So these are just a handful of traits that define what it means to be an entrepreneur before you become one. It's about the mindset, curiosity, taking actions, no matter how small. You don't need a company to start. You don't need a product. You need a mindset that says, I'm responsible, I'm curious, I'm willing to feel and learn. I'm an entrepreneur. Now here comes the tricky part for a lot of you. So let's clear something up. You don't need to know everything about everything. You don't need to master every skill, every piece of knowledge out there to make your big why happen. That's a myth that stuck so many people before they even get started. People think they need to become an expert in everything before they can act. And that is just fake, not true. Here's the truth. You need to know just enough to get started, to take action and to lead. Nothing more, nothing less. Look, when I started my international operating advertising agency, At 21, I wasn't a designer. I wasn't a programmer. I was not a marketing expert, but I did know what I wanted to achieve. I had my big why. I knew I needed to merge design and development in a way that no one else was doing at the time. So what did I do? I focused on learning just enough to be able to communicate effectively with the people I needed. I learned the basics of how databases work, not to become a database engineer or designer, but just so I could talk to my developers, just to understand what they were saying. I learned how to motivate designers, not because I was going to do the design, but because I could inspire them to bring my vision to life. And yeah, I knew a thing or two about planning. After all, before I started my advertising agency, I spent years as a house painter. And let me tell you, painting houses teaches you a lot about planning, especially in the Netherlands with the weather, and to manage expectations. So the key is here. I didn't need to be the best designer, developer, or marketer. I just needed enough understanding to be able to guide, communicate, and lead. And that's what I want you to focus on. Don't waste your time on thinking you need to master everything. Ask yourself, what do I need to know right now to move forward? Learn that, apply it, and move forward again. You know, Elon Musk was not an electric car expert when he started Tesla. He was not a rocket engineer when he started SpaceX. What he did was finding out what was essential. He learned enough to be dangerous in a positive way, I believe, and then take action. He surrounded himself with the right people, communicated his vision, and kept on moving forward. So stop asking, what do I need to know? And start asking, what do I need to know to take action right now? That's a different question. It's not about mastery. It's about momentum. It's about learning just enough to get to the next step, and then learn a bit more after that, and a bit more after that, and a bit more after that. So focus on what's necessary. Forget the rest, because what really matters is taking action, not perfection. If you can lead, communicate, and keep moving forward, you've got everything you need. So go out there, figure out the next smallest thing you need to know, and then take action on it. Because that's how you make things happen. Let me give you an example of my ex-wife, a personal one. My lovely ex-wife was not only lovely, but she was a beauty specialist in Hungary when I met her. And in my eyes, and I still believe, she was one of the best there was. Because back then, a beauty specialist in the Netherlands would work exactly 15 minutes if you booked her an hour. No more, no less. Didn't matter if you need less time or if you needed more. It was all about the clock. But she was trained differently. She was taught to take care of her clients, to give real attention. And if that meant running over time a bit to provide that little extra what the client needed, so be it. It wasn't about the clock. It was about the person in front of her. So when we moved to a bigger house in the Netherlands, which part of the house around 100 square meter in the center of Amsterdam, and I wanted to convert it into a saloon for her. So she would work independently. A beautiful space where she could do what she really, really loved. And trust me, it became a paradise because, well, I love design. But she didn't start. She had more than 10 years of experience by then. But she thought she still wasn't ready. She wanted to take course A, course B, course C, just to be prepared. We even traveled to India to learn all about Ayurveda. It's fascinating stuff, by the way, but that's another story. It took 2 years after building the saloon before she finally took on her own clients. 2 years of working for somebody else, coming home exhausted and unhappy because she couldn't give the clients the care she knew they deserved. You know what? Looking back, it breaks my heart a little because I didn't have the knowledge back then to help her. It was 25 years ago. I didn't know how to get her past that fear of not being enough, of not being ready. And it's a tragedy. She already had everything she needed. The skills, passion, the experience. But she waited until she felt she knew enough. When the truth is, she already knew more than enough. So the essence of this story, it's simple. Waiting until you feel completely ready is a trap. You're never going to feel ready. And it's okay. Start before you're ready. Take action. You don't need every course, every certificate, every last bit of knowledge. You need to trust that what you do and what you do have is enough to start. And the rest, you learn on the go. Don't waste your time waiting. Don't let your potential sit there unused for years. Take what you know, take what you have, and start now. Now, let's get real for a moment. Things are never going to go according to plan. And you know what? I believe that's absolutely fine. It's not about everything going right. It's about how you handle it when things go off script. It's about seeing those unexpected twists as opportunities rather than obstacles. Let me tell you about one of the biggest lessons I learned in my career. I started with my dream to make this city guide. And this was back in the days before we had internet like we know today. There was no Google Maps, no Street View, just an idea to create something that would let people experience a city without being there. It was ambitious, and honestly, it never took off the way I hoped. But there's the thing. While my plan for the city guides didn't go anywhere, something else was happening in the background. Because around that time, big companies like Backable Europe and Samsung Benelux and others started looking for ways to experiment with digital campaigns, websites, and all that new stuff in that time. And suddenly, they wanted people who understood both design and development. Because of the city guides, we were one of the few with a team of designers and developers working together. We had the skills they needed before they even realized they needed them. I could not have planned that. I couldn't have guessed that the city guide, which by all means looked like a total failure, would lead me to work with some of the biggest brands in the world. We went from this small, scrappy idea to becoming one of the largest advertising agencies in the Netherlands, later on with offices in Budapest and Jakarta, working with giants like Microsoft, Apple, and like I said, Samsung. It's like I say, life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. And I've lived that life. The point is here, you've got to be flexible. You've got to be ready for the opportunities that shows up when you least expect them. Plans change, things fall apart, and sometimes what looks like a failure is just the door opening to something better. Don't get stuck on one path. Be adaptable, be open to the twists and turns, because those detours often lead you exactly where you're meant to be. The city guide didn't make me successful, but the skills, the team, and the approach we developed while working on it, that did. So when life happens, take a breath, take a break, look around, take your time, and figure out how to turn it into an opportunity. That's what real entrepreneurship is all about. Don't put all your trust in your product, your idea, or your big plan. Trust in entrepreneurship itself, because where you start, what you make or what you think you're creating might not be what gets you to the finish line. It might not even be what the world needs. But if you trust in the process of entrepreneurship, if you trust in yourself as an entrepreneur, then you got something way more powerful. Why? Because that gives you the flexibility to run into opportunities you didn't even know were there, to embrace them when they show up, to create new ones along the way. When I started, I honestly thought my city guide idea, that was it. That was the big dream. But as I got into it, the world showed me something different, something better. I could have ignored it, clung to my original idea and missed the opportunity completely, but I didn't. I trusted the process, I trusted myself, and that's what made all the difference. The product you start with today might not even exist tomorrow, and that's fine. It's not about the product. It's about you as an entrepreneur. It's about taking action, putting yourself out there, and being flexible enough to see the doors that are opening because you dare to move. Trust me on this. If you put all your belief into the things you're making, you're putting yourself into a box. You're limiting what's possible because you're focusing on just that one thing. But if you trust in entrepreneurship, in doing, in taking action, then suddenly you're playing an entirely different game. You're no longer limited by whether your first product works or fails. You're now someone who creates value, who finds opportunities, who adapts. Take Elon Musk, for example. He didn't start out as a rocket engineer. And yet, here he is, launching people into space. He trusted himself as an entrepreneur. The electric cars, the rockets, the solar energy. It's all stuff that came from doing, from taking one step at a time and trusting the process. So here's my challenge to you. Stop worrying about whether what you're starting with is the final thing. It probably isn't. It probably shouldn't be. Instead, ask yourself, how can I take the next step? How can I stay in motion? How can I keep learning and adapting? When you trust in entrepreneurship, you give yourself permission to be flexible. You give yourself the power to not only find opportunities, but to create them and turn them into something bigger, something meaningful. I see it so often. Too many people get stuck trying to create the perfect product before they even start. They want every bell, every whistle, every damn feature. But here's the truth. You don't need perfect. You need something. You need an MVP. It's called a minimum viable product. And let me please be clear. An MVP isn't about cutting corners. It's about cutting the crap and focusing on what actually and really matters. Because most people, when they develop an idea, whether it's a website, an app, a store, or a platform, they get caught up in all things it could do. They start thinking about all the extra features and possibilities. But that's not the point of an MVP. With an MVP, the only question you should be asking is, what is the absolute and bare minimum that it needs to have to make it work? Look at Airbnb, for example. Do you really think the first version of Airbnb had all the features like it has today? Of course not. In the beginning, users couldn't even list their own homes. Brian and Joe, the founders, were adding listings manually. But it was enough to prove the concept. They focused on the core, the absolute essence of what needed to work. And that's what I need you to do. Strip your own idea to its essence. And then strip it even further until you have just the bare minimum. That's where the power of an idea lies. Not in what it could do someday, but what it can do right now. Make it smaller, make it simpler, and keep breaking it down until you really reach the core. Because here's the deal. If the essence of your idea doesn't attract customers, partners, or investors, then your idea either isn't good enough or it's too complex. People love simplicity, and they need to understand your value right away. And if your MVP can't show that, then you're barking up the wrong tree. And don't think this is just for tech. If you're opening a store and it needs renovation, learn how to use a hammer and a saw and get to work yourself. If it's a website, guess what? There are hundreds of tools out there. You don't need to be a coding expert. Grab a couple of YouTube videos, pick a tool, and build your prototype. The point is, start doing. Don't wait for resources to magically appear. Get your hands dirty. And here's the funny thing. Everything you make, everything you do, should always be as an MVP. Because your concept is never done. The moment it's finished, as an entrepreneur, you should already have a new idea brewing. The work is never truly complete. It's always evolving. And that's the mindset you need to have. So cut the crap. Stop waiting for perfection. And get something out there. Build it, launch it, see if it works. Learn from it, fail if you have to. And use that knowledge to build an even better MVP. Because that's the cycle. Create, test, fail, learn, and improve. That's how you grow. That's how you innovate. That's how you succeed. Trust in the ability to make something, even if it's not perfect, especially if it's not perfect. Because let me tell you, perfection never arrives, but progress happens every day you decide to start. So what is your MVP? What's the smallest thing you can create today to start making your idea real? Let me also tell you what not to do when you're starting a business or when your business isn't doing well, about cutting the crap. Let me tell you about Blokker. It is a retailer in the Netherlands that was once the top store where everything related to your home could be sold, could be bought. And growing up, if you needed a birthday gift, you went to Blokker. If you were getting married and needed an entire household set, that's where you went. They had around 450 stores, and they were at the top of their game. But today, nobody knows what Blokker stands for anymore. The simplicity of their concept is gone, and they've been struggling for years because customers can't figure out why they should go there in the first place. So what did they do to fix it? Well, they brought in an expensive marketer who brought in an even more expensive advertising agency. Now, I've been in advertising for years, but this is the kind of mistake that shows why some agencies just miss the mark completely. Their solution was to give Blokker a new logo. Yep, you hit me right. A new logo and a shiny graphic overhaul for all their stores. That was supposed to solve everything. And guess what happened after millions were spent on this new look? Right, nothing. Absolutely nothing changed. The customer still didn't know what Blocker was about, and the sales didn't improve. Because here's the truth. A new logo isn't going to save you if you don't know what value you're offering to the customer. And it sure as hell isn't going to save you if you're just starting out and think branding alone will make you successful. So when I say cut the crap, I mean it. You need to focus on the essence. Starting a business, or if your business is struggling, you need to ask yourself, what do people really need from me? What is the core problem I'm solving? If you can't answer that question in a simple, powerful way, all the logos, all the fancy branding, all the fluff in the world won't make a difference. Blockers should have gone back to the basics. They should have asked themselves what made them special in the first place. They were the place where you could find everything for your own. Instead of spending millions on a new look, they should have focused on what people actually needed and how they could make that experience better with an MVP. If you're just starting out, don't get lost in details that don't matter. Don't think you need the perfect website, the perfect logo, or the perfect business card. None of that will save you if your core offering isn't clear and valuable. If your business isn't doing well, don't think that a superficial change is a solution. You need to cut the crap. Strip it down to the essence. What are you actually offering that people want? So the next time you're tempted to think the new logo, fresh look, or fancy branding is the answer, remember Blocker. Remember that's not the packaging that counts. It's the product, the value, and of course your big why. It's what you're actually giving to the customer. Cut the crap, focus on the essence, and make sure that your foundation is rock solid before worrying about how it looks. Failure is not just a part of the process of being an entrepreneur. It's actually the best part. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. Because it means we're getting somewhere. Failing fast is the only way you're going to succeed fast. It's like when you learned how to walk as a kid. How did you learn to walk? Exactly, by falling over and over and over again. And the more times you fell, the faster you learn to walk and then to run. It's no different in business or life. Because here's the truth. There are no books that can teach you the reality of entrepreneurship. No course, not even this one, can give you all the answers. Because by the time it's written down, the world has already moved on. It's outdated. The only thing that isn't outdated is the experience of doing, of trying and failing. I've been doing YouTube movies now for 2 years. And you know what? Still no traction. Despite all my experience, despite helping others reaching millions, my own channel is a big flop. And guess what? It's okay. I keep trying, I keep learning. And yeah, some of my partners think I'm making a fool out of myself, but I don't care. I have to keep failing until I get it right. Because that's what it means to be an entrepreneur for me. To fall on your face, dust yourself off and try again. Let me give you another example. About 50 years ago, I decided we should offer cheap websites for small businesses. Because back then, we were working only for clients who had budgets above like 100,000 euro or dollar. And I thought we could create a side branch to help smaller companies. So we put together a team of 2 people and spent about 6 months at building it out. We didn't get a single client, 0. Failure after failure. But here's the beauty of it. We didn't get customers, but we gained the knowledge to offer simpler, more affordable solutions to our existing clients. Sometimes that's the real win. Not what you planned, but what you've learned. And don't even get me started on riding as a 50-year-old boy moped. I thought I knew what I was doing until I had my first accident. Went flying over the hood of a car, landed in a ditch with a broken arm and leg. It was only after that crash that I really learned how to ride safely. Because let's face it, you don't really understand until your ditch went wrong. It went really the wrong way. That's when you learn. That's when it really sticks. And here's what I need you to understand. Failing is the mistake. It's not something to hide. It's a right. It's a right you have to fail. It's something you earn, something you use. It's not about failing for the sake of failing, don't get me wrong. Failure isn't the goal, but when you see it as a gift, as something that makes you better, it becomes the most valuable tool you have. So I want you to go out there and fail. Fail fast, fail often, and fail with the intention to learn. Every mistake you make is a lesson you couldn't get anywhere else. Every time you fall, you get a little bit better, a little smarter, a little tougher maybe. Remember, those who succeed are the ones who weren't afraid to fail. So get out there, take risks, screw it up, and then learn from it. That's the real path to success. And that's how you're going to get ahead of everyone still sitting around waiting for the perfect plan. Fail fast, learn rapidly, and embrace every fail as the best damn education you ever get. So the way I see it is like this. There's a real problem with being afraid to fail. And even worse, trying with all your might to avoid failure is really dangerous. It makes you overthink, overanalyze, and spend all your energy trying to avoid mistakes instead of making progress. When you're more focused on preventing failure than actually getting better or adding value, you're stuck. So here's my formula. 80% of your time should be spent trying, 10% on avoiding mistakes, and the last 10% should be reserved to start over when you screw up. Because trust me, most of you will. And that's a good thing. Let me give an example about Philips. Everybody knows Philips. And back in the 80s, they were in a tough spot, facing fierce competition from Japan. And what is going on? The Japanese companies were copying Philips' inventions. The VCR, the compact disc, you name it. And they were bringing them to the market cheaper. Why? Well, it was quite simple because they didn't have to pay for all the research and development and the fancy engineers that Philips had. They just took what Philips created and put it out there for less lot money. So what did Philips do? Well, they panicked. They threw all the resources into preventing the competition from stealing their idea. They decided that this mistake could never happen again. They locked everything down, focused all the energy on protecting their precious technology and the processes, and they stopped innovating. So here's where they went wrong. Instead of learning from their mistake, instead of understanding you can't win by hiding your ideas in the safes, they should have focused on outpacing the competition. You can't beat somebody who's copying you just by trying to keep things from them. You beat them by staying so far ahead that they can't keep up. Take the CDI, for example, the compact disc interactive. A long time ago. It was meant to be this multimedia platform, something that would bring interactivity in people's home. And it ended up being a total flop. But the point isn't that they failed with the CDI. The point is what happens after their failure. They start realizing that they had to take risk again. Under Jan Timmer's leadership, they got back on track. They started taking chances. They started innovating. And they started failing in the right way by moving forward, by learning, and by taking bold action. And sure, the CDI didn't work out, but that wasn't the end of Philips. They used those failures, those lessons, to pull themselves out of the hole they were in. So what's the lesson here? Failing is not just a thing to deal with. It's a necessary part of getting ahead. When Philips decided that failure was an option, they froze. They spent all the time trying to protect what they had instead of making something new. When they finally start embracing failure again, when they start moving quickly and taking risks, that's when they start to recover. So look, failure isn't something to fear. It's a tool. It's the best damn teacher you ever had. If you spend all your time trying to prevent failure, you end up doing nothing. So take a page out of Philip's book. Innovate faster than anyone can copy you. Fall flat in your face if you have to, and then get back up and do it all over again. Because every failure gets you closer to something that works. You need to think big. No, I mean really big. So big that it scares you. Richard Branson once said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. And you know what? I believe he's totally right. Because the size of your dream shapes everything else. Your actions, your thinking, the opportunities you see, the people you meet. Dream too small and you limit yourself before you even start. Dream big and suddenly you open up a whole different set of possibilities. Now, does that mean that everybody needs to become the next Richard Branson or Elon Musk? Of course not. But if your dream is just to open a little shop in a back alley that makes $1,000 a month, the way you act, the people you meet, the challenges you see, all of that will become on a complete different level than when you're dreaming of a 5-star restaurant in a prime spot like the Times Square or the Champs-Élysées in Paris. But here's the twist. Think big, act small. That's the magic formula. Have that huge dream, but don't let it paralyze you. The key is to figure out what the smallest, simplest step is that you can take today to move forward towards that big dream. They say, if you don't aim for the stars, you'll never reach the moon. Also, that's true. But you don't need to build a rocket today. You just need to get started. What's the next step? Maybe it's getting a sketch on paper. Maybe it's having that first conversation, or maybe it's setting up a simple website. Whatever it is, keep it small and doable. Look at Elon Musk. He didn't start out building rockets. He started with small companies, gained experience, and took it step after step. He kept thinking big, but acting in a way that was manageable, that allowed progress. That's what you need to do. And here's the thing. When you act small, when you take those little steps, you learn. You figure out what works and what doesn't, and you adjust. You don't need a detailed map towards your big vision, because frankly, that map doesn't exist. What you need is a compass pointing you in the right direction and the guts to start walking. I remember when I started my agency, my vision was huge. I wanted to change how design and technology work together. It was a vision that scared me at that time. But I didn't start by trying to land massive contracts with global companies. I started by taking small, practical steps. I found the first developers and designers willing to work on something different. I learned what motivated them, and we kept taking one small step at a time. Before I knew it, we were working for companies like Samsung and Apple and Microsoft. But it didn't happen overnight. It was small action building up over time. So let me ask you this. What was your big dream again? And what's the smallest thing you can do today to move forward? Don't get stuck in a how of reaching the stars. Focus on what's right in front of you. Let me give you a practical example of what I mean by think big and act small. One day, it was somewhere in 2003, a guy named Dennis Karpers walked in our office in Amsterdam. And Dennis was this tall, lanky guy, kind of a scruffy dude who looked like he just stepped out of a club, which, by the way, wasn't far from the truth. Well, he works in marketing for an international clothing brand. He loved going out and he loved dancing. And that's how I met one of my colleagues in the club. My colleagues had told Dennis about me and my company, and about how we often invested in good causes if we believed in them and thought we could make a difference. So Dennis comes in and he got this idea. He wants to eradicate AIDS through dancing. I'm sitting there rubbing my eyes, cleaning out my ears to make sure I hit them right. And yeah, you hear it, dancing. According to Dennis, one of the biggest reasons AIDS was spreading like wildfire in Africa at that time was lack of education. And dancing could be the solution. I mean, could you make the connection between dancing and the impossible dream of eradicating AIDS? But Dennis laid it all out. He had co-founded a foundation with Ilko van der Linde, and their vision was huge. They wanted hundreds of million people across Africa to dance all at the same time, while a major dance event called Sensation White was happening in Europe. Now, for those who are not familiar, Sensation White was this massive dance event organized by IDT, and that was one of the biggest event companies in the dance scene. It was a full-on spectacle where everyone dressed in white, and it became a global phenomenon. So Dennis wanted to use Sensation White to kick off a movement. They broadcast it across Africa, and during the tour leading up to the main event, they educate people on how HIV is transmitted and how to protect themselves. They bring awareness while getting people involved in something positive, namely dancing. So we created a presentation with Dennis in one of the skyboxes in the Amsterdam Arena, and that night, with the help of IDT, we brought in some of the wealthiest people in the Netherlands. And Dennis pitched his big, bold vision, and it clicked. And the energy was incredible. And that very night, enough funding was raised to launch the event for the following year. And that was massive. Millions of people around the world, not just in Africa, were dancing for awareness. It wasn't just a campaign, it was a movement. And did we eradicate AIDS? No, of course not. But that was not the point. This was aiming for the stars. But did it bring immense awareness? Absolutely. It was about getting people to think different, to be part of something bigger. And here's the thing. Dennis had this massive dream, one that seemed ridiculous on the surface. But he didn't stop there. He broke it down into small, actionable steps. He found the right partners, reached out to the right people, and took one step at a time to make it happen. He wasn't paralyzed by the size of his vision. He was driven by it. And then he acted small. He organized his meetings, spoke to people, got the funding, and used a big event like Sensation White as a platform. This is what I mean when I say think big, act small. You have to be fearless with your dreams, big enough that they really scare you. But you need to ground those dreams in actions that are manageable, that you can start doing right today. You don't start by thinking, how do I eradicate AIDS? You start asking, how do I get people dancing? How do I reach out to the right partners? How do I educate a few more people today? Dreaming big shapes the direction. Acting small gets you there, one step at a time. And that's what makes impossible dreams possible. Small actions building up into something so much bigger and more impactful. Sometimes you need to let go. Even if you poured your heart, your time, and your energy into something, sometimes it just isn't going to work. And when that moment comes, you need to have the guts to say, that's it. Time to move on. That's exactly what kill your darling means. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about giving up at the first sign of trouble. Hell no. If you quit just because the world doesn't understand you yet, you're not giving yourself a fair chance. You'll always run into doubters. People will say this isn't going to work, or why are you even trying? You can't let that stop you. If you listen to every naysayer, you will never get anywhere. You have to trust yourself. You have to feel deep down whether your idea is still the best way to contribute to your big why. It's not about what the outside world thinks. That's just feedback to make you better at your storytelling. But here's the flip side. If you've tried every angle, explained it in countless ways, applied cut the crap, and still no one's buying it, then maybe it's time to kill your darling. It's not easy. You're attached to it. You want it to succeed. But the truth is, if it's not working, it's not working. You have to let it go, even if it hurts. Think of it like this. If you're trying to teach a fish to climb a tree, you're going to fail, right? It doesn't matter how much you love that fish, how much you want it to work. You're fighting against reality. Sometimes, no matter how much potential you think an idea has, it's just not the right fit. And your energy is better spent elsewhere. But there's a fine line between persistence and stubbornness. The best entrepreneurs know the difference. They understand when to keep pushing and when to say, all right, it's time to let this one go. They know that their goal isn't to make this particular idea work. It's to achieve their vision, their big why. That's what it's all about. If that means dropping an idea to make space for a better one, then so be it. So we need to learn to ride the waves. The waves are stronger than you. Be flexible, adaptable. Also wise enough to know when you're wasting energy on something that's not working. Don't let pride or emotional attachment keep you tied to an idea that isn't going anywhere. Use that energy for something new, something that can actually take you where you want to go. Let me tell you about one of my own darlings, a big darling at that time. One I eventually had to kill. It was called Call the One. It's a video calling platform that my companions and I started developing a long time before COVID even was a word that everybody knew. So back then, we were already working from different locations in different countries, connecting through video calls. But the options out there were pretty limited. Some expensive professional systems, and then there was Skype. So we decided to make our own, Call the One, and not just a video calling platform. This was going to be something more. We wanted people from all over the world to be able to offer their services simply by creating a profile and getting paid per minute during video consultations. The idea was to make it accessible for everyone, anywhere, whether you were a yoga teacher in India or an English tutor in the UK. And I can tell you the first prototype got some praise. And we found ourselves sitting at a table where the big insurance companies and even the roadside assistance companies wanted to offer remote help through video calling with our platform. So it seemed like a hit. But here's the thing. The world wasn't quite ready. The general sentiment was still hesitant. It was like, yoga lessons via video? Nah, people won't do that. It won't catch on. English lessons over a call? That will never work, they said. The market was just not ready to embrace video calling on a large scale. Meanwhile, Zoom started picking up speed. Call the One, our platform, had aimed at freelancers and individuals. But Zoom was going straight for the corporates. So we had a different vision, a different big why. Our idea was to open up opportunities for people in less developed countries to share their knowledge, break into new markets, and earn a living. And it was bold, but Zoom was moving fast. And they raised $100 million just before COVID hit. And they were making all the right moves. And then the pandemic happened. Lockdowns everywhere, a perfect opportunity for Caller One. By then, our platform was packed with features. We had improved and added more, and it was rich in functionality. But as fast as COVID spread, so did Zoom. So suddenly, people weren't asking why they should use video calls anymore. They were asking why they should switch from Zoom to Caller One. So we lost momentum. Zoom was everywhere. We tried repositioning, tweaking, finding a new angle, but we were just too late. And eventually, we had to make a tough decision. We decided to shut down the operation, let it go, and move on. And Caller One was like a child to me, a beloved project. I really could imagine how many people we could have helped. But sometimes you have to kill your darling, no matter how much potential you see, no matter how much energy and time you invested. Sometimes you have to take a step back and realize it's not going to make it. And that's what it's all about. Being willing to let go, even when it's painful. Because it's not about clinging to what you love. It's about what works and what makes a difference. Caller One had its moment. But when that moment passed, we had to face reality. So remember, dream big, take small actions, and when the time comes, don't be afraid to kill your darling. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you made space for something better, something that can thrive instead of struggle. It's about freeing yourself to move forward and make an even bigger impact. Let's talk about the difference between being bold and being stubborn, because believe me, there's a huge difference. And it's something you need to get right if you want to make it as an entrepreneur. Being bold means having the guts to try something new, to push boundaries, to move forward, even when no one else can see what you see. It's about standing your ground when you believe in your vision. But being stubborn, that's when you refuse to listen, when you ignore everyone just because you think you're always right. And that, my friends, is a recipe for a disaster. So how do you find the balance and see the difference? Simple. Get as much advice as you can, but always listen to your guts. You want to gather as much input as possible. Ask as many questions as you can. Talk to as many people as possible. By the end, you are the one who makes the decision, not them. It's your vision, your big why, and you're the one who has to trust in it. And of course, not everyone is going to understand why you don't follow their well-intentioned advice. You're going to come across a lot of people who think you're crazy for not listening to them. But that's part of the journey. Thank them for their opinion. Let them know you appreciate it and tell them you consider it. Doesn't mean you have to take it, because if you ask 1,000 people for advice, you're going to get 1,000 different opinions. And here's the trick. You don't need to act on all of them. What you need to do is figure out which maximum 10% is actually useful and ignore the rest. But then let's talk about stubbornness for a second. There's nothing wrong with going against the grain if you have a new perspective, a new approach. But if you're doing exactly the same thing that somebody else has already done, and you ignore their warnings because you think you'll magically get a different result, that's being stubborn. That's being foolish. That's not bold. That's just wasting your time. But when you have a new twist, a new approach, and you're willing to hear everyone out, even when 90% of the people you talk to will tell you it won't work, and still you believe in it, that's not being stubborn. That's how the biggest businesses in the world are born. That's how progress happens. If we all kept doing what we were doing, we won't have progress. Moving forwards means doing something untested, something new. And you can bet that most people will reject that. They call it impossible. They call you crazy. They say you're wasting your time. But here's the thing. Be bold, dream big, and push ahead. But don't ignore the lessons others have already learned the hard way. Don't be that fool who's trying to teach a fish to climb a tree. Learn from the mistakes of others. But don't let their fear of failure hold you back by trying something new. Let me give you another real-life example about being bold without crossing over into stubbornness. Back in the early 90s, I had this crazy idea for this city guide. I wanted people to be able to virtually walk through a city. moving from one intersection to the next, using panoramic photos. Now keep in mind, this was almost 10 years before Google Street View would even exist. There was nothing like it. So back then, if you wanted the photo, you had to scan it manually, adjust the colors by hand, and actually a panoramic photography wasn't even a thing at that time. It was just not possible. But it was exactly what I wanted. Panoramic shots that would allow people to experience a city from their home. I wanted them to feel like they were there exploring the streets. So what did I do? I started to ask everyone I could find for advice. And now I found this famous photographer, let's call him Peter. And he was known for trying out all the latest gadgets and technologies in film and photography. So if anyone could give me an insight, it was him. So finally we had a meeting, and Peter was ready to list all the reasons why this was impossible. I mean, he must have had 50 arguments lined up. The color correction, the bending of the light, the perspective issues, the sheer workload. It was a technical nightmare. As an expert, Peter told me to give it up and move on to something else. If it were possible, someone would have already done it, he said. But here's the thing. Peter knew everything about film photography, but he didn't know a thing about software development. And that made all the difference. He couldn't see the solution because he didn't have that perspective. With his knowledge, his expertise, he was right. But his insight was limited to his field. Now here the boldness comes in. I wasn't about to just drop it because someone, even an expert, said it couldn't be done. But I also wasn't going to ignore what Peter was saying. He wasn't wrong about the challenges. But what I needed was a new approach. So I went back to my developers and we started brainstorming. Then I asked, is there any way we could create software that would automatically recognize the overlap between two photos and stitch them together? 3 weeks later, we had an answer. The first digital panorama photo was a reality. 8 months after that, the Dutch press got their first look at what was essentially the precursor of Google Street View. Now here's the point. Sometimes the experts are right by their standards. But if you're willing to look at the problem from a different angle, if you're willing to think creatively, you can find a way. Be bold enough to try something new. But don't be so stubborn that you ignore valid challenges. Use those challenges as fuel to innovate. Peter wasn't wrong. He was just thinking inside the box of what was already possible in his world. He didn't have the software development knowledge to see the solution, and that's why you need to be bold, but not stubborn. Know when to listen, know when to take advice, and then decide if there's a fresh way to tackle the problem. Because sometimes when everyone else says it can be done, they're just waiting for someone like you to prove them wrong. Let's talk about feedback. Because, my friends, it is nothing short of a miracle. Feedback is the fuel that keeps you moving forward. And without it, you're flying blind, and sooner or later, you're gonna crash. The thing is, most people get all defensive when they have feedback, especially when it's critical. Let me tell you something. Every single piece of feedback is a gift, even when it stays. Here's how you need to see it as an entrepreneur. Feedback is like vitamins. It will keep you healthy, what helps you grow. It's insight given to you from someone else's perspective. And yeah, it's subjective. That's why it's so important to be resilient, to have the ability to shift your perspective, to understand where the other person is coming from, and to see what their reality is trying to tell you. Feedback is something someone is investing in you. They invest their time and energy in you. And that alone is something to be grateful for. Imagine someone giving you a pastry every day. Eventually, even when you love pastries, there's going to be one that doesn't taste great or isn't prepared well. Do you get mad at the person who offered it to you for free every day? Of course not. You thank them. You skip that one. That's all. It's the same with feedback. Sometimes you're going to get a piece of feedback that doesn't sit right, that isn't helpful or constructive. But instead of getting upset, thank the person for the effort and move on. Unless they're smearing that pastry in your face out of spite, then it's time to set some boundaries. But for all the other times, be thankful for the efforts. Because imagine a world where no one offers you any pastry anymore, or worse, a world where you expect everyone to deliver the perfect pastry exactly the way you want it every single time. That would be absurd, right? And here's the key. This applies to all kinds of feedback. Feedback on what you say, how you say it, what you do and how you do it. Feedback about your ideas, your concepts, even the way the market reacts to your product or concept. That's feedback. When people don't buy what you're selling, that's not a failure, it's feedback. And you can use that to grow. Look, it's easier to hear the positive stuff. Everyone loves praise. But real growth happens when you take in the constructive but critical, the stuff that pushes you out of your comfort zone. If you only listen to what you want to hear, you're not growing, you're stagnating. So here's what I want you to do. Gather every piece of feedback you can find. Absorb it, analyze it, use it to make yourself better. Don't get defensive, don't make excuses, and don't waste time wishing it had been delivered differently. Focus on the content, on the intention behind it. Feedback is time and energy someone chose to spend on you. That's a gift. And if one day you find that no one is giving you feedback anymore, that's when you need to be worried. That is a very scary moment, because that's when people have stopped caring enough to invest in you. Then you're really in trouble. Feedback should be your best friend. It's what keeps you from stagnating. It's what keeps you from learning. It's what keeps you ahead of the competition. Embrace it. Be grateful for it. And most of all, use it. Because it's not the people who avoid feedback that grow. It's the ones who welcome it, learn from it, and use it to become unstoppable. Let's talk about money. Because for a lot of people, this is where things get tricky. Too many aspiring entrepreneurs get stuck here, thinking they can't start until they have funding. But let me tell you something. Money is a mean, not a goal. It's just a tool. It's never the reason you start something. And more often than not, you don't need nearly as much of it as you think. But first things first. Know about skin in the game. If you're serious about your idea, you need to give everything you have, starting with your time and, yes, your own money. If you're not willing to put in your own savings on the line, why would anyone else? Too many people think they need money first to even get started, but that's just not true. Most ideas can be started with what you already got. Take the example of a woman I once spoke. She wanted to start selling colorful socks. You know, those socks with a lot of colors. Back then, colorful socks were blowing up across Europe. And she asked me how she could get funding to build a website, travel to India to buy a batch of socks, and to run a promotional campaign. This is the kind of idea that doesn't need any big investment to get off the ground. She was already working as a yoga instructor, and she earned enough, a decent living, to have some savings. And with just a little bit of extra income, that saving, she could have easily had a few examples sent over from India. She could sell those to the people she knew, take the profits, buy a few more, and do it again and again, and repeat it until she had enough to build a simple website. You don't need to go all in from day one. You start small, build your momentum, and you reinvest. That's the idea. So what I'm trying to say is that most of the time, you don't need big money to get an idea off the ground. And if you do eventually need funding, you better be ready to show that your idea already works. No one wants to invest in concepts. No one just, I have an idea, so please give me money. You need proof, you need traction. And that brings me to the FFF, which stands for Friends, Family, and Fools. Because if you do need some money, where do you go first? You go to the people who already know you, who already trust you. And that means your friends, your family, and yes, even a few fools who believe in your passion. Why? Because if the closest to you don't believe in your vision, why would a stranger? And it's not about the amount of money. It's about the fact that people who know you are willing to put something behind you. And it's called trust. It's called credibility. Even if it's a small amount, the fact that they invested in you speaks volumes. If your friends and family believe in you, you've got a foundation. If they don't, it's time to take a hard look at why. And maybe that's a sign that you need to tweak your approach. So money is not the goal. The goal is to solve a problem, to create value, to make an impact. And if you believe in that, you put everything into it, your time, your energy, your savings, and start with what you have. Be resourceful. And if you do need funding, start with an FFF. You can't convince the closest to you you're not ready for the big investor. Let me tell you about Nick Woodman and how he got GoPro off the ground. This guy didn't start with a fancy investor pitch deck or $1 million funding runs. Hell no. He started with shell necklaces. Nick was selling shell necklaces out of his van to gather enough cash to fund his idea. That's what skin in the game looks like. Nick didn't wait around for someone to come and hand him over a pile of cash. He took what he had, his time, his van, and a bunch of shell necklaces. And he used that to get started. And when he needed a little bit more, he turned to his family. And he got a loan from his parents. That's what we call friends, family, and fools. People who believe in you enough to take a chance, even when others don't see it yet. He didn't go to venture capitalists. He didn't beg for funding. He hustled, he worked, and he used the resources he had. And he invested everything into building the first GoPro cameras and accessories. He wasn't focused on building a perfect product right from the start. He was focused on getting started, on creating something he could put in the hands of people and improve it from there. And it's exactly how he turned GoPro into a global success. So you don't need outside capital to start most of the time. You need belief, hustle, and the willingness to put everything you got into it. If you're not ready to sell shell necklaces out of your van, if you're not ready to ask your family for a loan, then you're not ready to build a business. Nick Woodman wasn't waiting for permission. He took action. So if you're thinking about money is the biggest thing holding you back, think again. You don't need investors. You need the guts to start with what you got. You need people around you who believe in you enough to give you a small loan if you need it. You need to be willing to get your hands dirty. Sell those necklaces if that's what it takes, and just start. That's how you turn an idea into reality, and that's how you prove to yourself and others that your vision is worth it. Let's talk about perfection, because there's one thing that can slow you down, hold you back, and keep you from moving forward, and it's the idea that everything has to be perfect. I'm here to tell you, perfection is a means, not a goal. Strive for excellence, yes, but don't get stuck trying to make everything flawless. Perfection can kill innovation, and here's why. It makes you afraid to move, afraid to take risks, and afraid to launch before every tiny detail is in place. Take Tesla, for example. Those first cars that rolled off the assembly line, they were far from perfect. I had a friend who bought 7 of them for his company, and in the first week, he came up with a list of 113 issues. Doors that opened by themselves, batteries that wouldn't charge, you name it. But it didn't matter. Elon Musk didn't wait until everything was flawless to start selling. He knew that progress came from getting those cars on the roads, from learning from real-world feedback, and from constantly improving. He knew that good enough is sometimes exactly what you need to get going. And then there's Apple. Do you think they started out with those sleek, beautiful designs that Steve Jobs became famous for? No. They started with motherboards, just bare, soldered circuit boards. They were ugly as hell, but they worked. The perfection wasn't in the design, it was in the function. The design came later, after they proved the concept worked, and started building traction. Steve Jobs became obsessed with design later in the game. He didn't let it stop him from getting started. And here's where entrepreneurs mess up. They get lost in the little details. They think that the logo must be perfect, the website needs to look like $1 million, the shop has to be flawless before they open. They spend months tweaking those trivialities, thinking that perfection is what's going to bring them success. And guess what? Most of the times it's not. The truth is, no one cares if your logo is perfect if your product or concept solves a problem. No one cares if your website has the best design if your offering doesn't deliver. So perfection is not the same as excellence. Excellence is about meeting the needs of your customer, about being great in their eyes, not yours. It's about delivering value, solving a problem, and making a difference by contributing to a bigger why. But perfection, on the other hand, is about control, about the fear of being criticized, about worrying that you're not good enough. And that's a dangerous road to go down because it will stop you from taking risks, from putting yourself out there and from learning what actually works. Look at SpaceX. And now those rockets, those have to be perfect, because if they're not, they explode. So perfection has its place. But for most of us, perfection doesn't need to be the goal. The goal is progress. The goal is moving forward. So be excellent, but don't be a perfectionist. Know what the customer wants and be great in their eyes. And remember, sometimes good enough is exactly what you need to take that first step, to get feedback, to iterate, and to grow. Perfection is just a tool, a mean to an end. Don't make it the end itself, because if you do, you never get started. Move forward, allow with flaws, improve as you go. That's how you grow, that's how you innovate, and that's how you reach and contribute to your big why. Let's talk about the difference between knowledge and wisdom, because it's a big one and it's critical for every entrepreneur. Knowledge is useful, it's valuable. You need to know things. But wisdom is what makes you powerful. Wisdom comes from experience, from being out there in the world, making mistakes, taking risks, and learning along the way. Wisdom is what gives you the ability to see the bigger picture and to make decisions that others might overlook. Here's a story for you. There's an old anecdote about a man who wanted to sell shoes in the Sahara. And when he told his friends about it, one of them said, "But in the Sahara, everyone walks barefoot or wears sandals, isn't it? Why would you sell shoes over there?" And the man replied, "Exactly. That's why I'm going to sell shoes over there." Now, the moral here isn't about shoes. And I mean no disrespect, of course. People in Africa, in the Sahara, also wear shoes. But the point is this. You can't just assume things. You can't know if they're not wearing shoes because they prefer to walk barefoot or wearing sandals, or simply because no one has offered them until then. So that's the power of wisdom over knowledge. Knowledge would tell you everyone is already doing this, so it must be the best way. Wisdom asks, but what if they're not? What if they're just waiting for something better? Wisdom is the ability to question assumptions, to dig deeper, and to see opportunities where others see obstacles. Think about it this way. Knowledge tells you what exists, what the rules are, what's to be tried. Wisdom is what makes you ask, is there another way? As an entrepreneur, your job isn't just to know things, it's to think pragmatically, to look at what's happening and to figure out how you can do it different, do it better, or solve a problem no one else is addressing. That's not something you learn in a classroom. There's no degree for seeing the big picture. If you're a doctor, sure, you need to know which medication works and which doesn't. That's knowledge. But as an entrepreneur, you need to look at the entire system. You need to ask questions and see what's missing and figure out if there's a new way of doing things. You need to use wisdom to see beyond what's obvious and to understand what's possible. It requires that you're willing to learn, to experiment, to fail, and to grow. It's about questioning what you think you know. So when you're facing with a challenge, ask yourself, are you relying on what you already know? Or are you being wise, stepping back and seeing the bigger picture? Are you asking the right questions, digging deeper, and looking for new angles? Let me tell you about the story that shows the difference between knowledge and wisdom. There was this entrepreneur here in the Netherlands, now a well-known name, who decided to bring the LED lights, the LED lights, into the market at the start of this century. It was around 2000. And he wanted to go big. So he went straight to the government. And imagine the savings if all the tunnels, all the street lights would use LED, like we have now, right? So after knocking at a lot of doors, he finally had an agreement for a pilot project. And they decided to equip a bicycle tunnel with this LED lights. And one evening, when it was pitch dark, the entrepreneur, the official from the government, and the technical advisor all met up to check the results. And from miles away, you could already see that the tunnel was lit up like it was daylight. It had never been so bright illuminated. And the official was glowing. This could be a game changer, a huge cost saver. And then the technical advisor pulled out his light meter He looked at it, tapped it a couple of times to make sure it was working right, and said, well, it's a shame, but this lighting doesn't meet our standard. The meter says the light output is too low. The entrepreneur and the official looked at each other, blasted, and they both said, almost unison, but you can see that these lights are brighter, no? And the advisor agreed, yes, they're much brighter, but the guideline says they need to meet a specific standard, and the reading doesn't match up. By the way, LED lighting is measured differently, but hey, protocol is protocol. So this is a perfect example of the difference between knowledge and wisdom. The technical advisor knew all the rules. He knew all the protocols. He had the knowledge, his procedures, and his meter, and he followed them to the letter. But what he lacked was the wisdom to see the bigger picture, the wisdom to understand that the protocol was outdated and didn't account for a new type of light. He missed the wisdom to say, maybe the way we've been measuring isn't right for this technology. So knowledge will tell you what the rulebook says. It tells you what's always been done. But wisdom, that's what makes you question whether the rulebook is even relevant anymore. Wisdom is what allows you to look at the light, to see that it's brighter, to understand that sometimes the standards need to change when technology changes. And that's what I want you to understand as an entrepreneur. Rules, procedures, guidelines, they're useful. They help you get started. They give you a framework, but wisdom is what tells you when to challenge them. Wisdom is what makes you say, hey, maybe there's a better way. So the point is, as an entrepreneur, you not just follow the rules. You're trying to solve problems, to make things better, to innovate. And sometimes that means knowing when to look beyond what's written down. And instead, trusting what you see, trusting what makes sense. It's about being pragmatic, about having the courage to think differently when a situation calls for it. So remember, knowledge is what tells you how things are. Wisdom is what allows you to see what could be. And if you want to succeed, you need both. Don't just rely on procedures. Use your common sense, your insight, your ability to adapt. That's what makes you not just knowledgeable, but wise. Let's get into sales. Now I know some of you hear that word and cring a little. And you might think about pushy salespeople, cold calls, pressure tactics, the kind of stuff that makes you want to run the other way. But here's the truth. The best salespeople don't even feel like they're selling. They're just telling a story, creating a vision, and drawing people in. It's what I like to call sales without sales. So let's break it down. Selling isn't about tricking somebody into buying something they don't need or want. It's about creating value. It's about making somebody feel something. When you're passionate about your idea, when you have a big why and you're passionate about it, people can feel it. And instead of selling them something, what you're actually doing is inviting them into your dream. You're saying, here's my vision. How amazing would it be if we could make this happen together? That is what makes the difference. When you're truly driven by a big why, you're not trying to convince someone or anything. You're sharing your story, your dream, your passion. You're giving them a chance to be part of it. You're giving them the opportunity to make a difference. Think about it like this. Imagine you're on a mission to bring clean drinking water to communities that need it. When you talk about it, you don't say, hey, I need you to buy this water infiltration system. You tell them about the families who could finally have clean water, about the kids who could grow up healthy, about the difference clean water could make in someone's life. You let them see it, feel it. And then you say, how incredible would it be if we would make this happen together? You're not selling a product. You're giving them a chance to contribute to something bigger than themselves. And here's the key. People don't buy products. They buy into stories, into visions, into feelings. They want to be part of something meaningful. They want to know that what they're buying is more than just a thing. It's a step towards something that matters. So how do you do this? You always start by knowing and feeling your big why. I can't stretch it enough. Be clear about what drives you, what problem you're solving, and why it matters. And when you talk to potential customers, don't focus on the features. Focus on the story. Let them feel the passion behind your idea. Make them see the possibilities. What could the world look like If your vision became true, what difference would it make? And when you do this right, you're not selling, you're inspiring. You're making people want to join you, to be part of the solution, to help you achieve your dream. And that, my friends, is the kind of sales that doesn't feel like sales at all. Remember this. People want to be inspired. They want to be moved. They want to be part of something bigger. Give them a chance. Share your story. Live your big why and let them come to you. Not because they feel pressured, but because they want to be part of your journey. That's how you attract people without ever having to push. And that's how you make sales feel less like a transaction and more like a movement. So here we are, at the end of this course, but just at the beginning of your journey. We covered a lot, haven't we? We talked about boldness, wisdom, failing fast, thinking big, acting small, and staying true to your big why. But none of this matters if you don't take it with you and apply it in your life. And I mean, really apply it, not just in your business, but in every part of who you are. Now, let's reflect for a moment and take a look at where you started and where you are now. Maybe you began this journey feeling unsure, feeling like an entrepreneur was just a label other people wore. But look at you now. You've got the tools, the mindset, and the fire to go out there and make something happen. You learned how to run ideas into action, how to stay bold without being reckless, how to seek out the truth behind what people say, and how to stay humble, yet relentless in your pursuit of growth. But here's the thing. Growth doesn't stop just because this course ends. Challenges will come. They always do. You will have moments where things fall apart, where the failures seem to outnumber the wins. And it's in those moments that I want you to come back to what you learned here. Come back to your big why. Remember why you started. Remember the impact you want to make and let that fuel you. When the world say, give up, that's where you need to dig in. Take a breath and keep moving. Your big why is what will keep you grounded when everything else feels shaky. It's what will give you the resilience to get back up when you've fallen and the courage to push forward when others say it's impossible. Because it's not about never falling. It's about how many times you're willing to stand back up. Let me ask you something. What's the promise you're going to make yourself today? What commitment will you make right now to keep moving forward, no matter what happens? I want you to commit to your journey. It's not always going to be easy and not always going to be fun. But if you stay true to yourself, if you keep pushing, if you keep learning, and if you keep creating value, there's no limit to what you can achieve. Remember this. There are no guarantees in entrepreneurship. There will be wins, there will be losses, and there will be times where you're not sure if it's worth it. But the only way to truly fail is stop trying. Everything else, every stumble, every challenge, every so-called failure is just another step on the journey. It's just another lesson, another opportunity to get better, to get wiser, to get stronger. So go out there, stay true to your big why, and make things happen. Don't wait for the perfect time, because it doesn't exist. Don't wait until everything is perfect, because it will never be. Take what you've learned here and make a commitment to yourself. Go out there and create, build, fail, grow, and succeed. The world needs people like you, people who are willing to take risks, push the boundaries and make it different. So be bold, be wise, and stay dedicated to your journey, because this is just the beginning, and I can't wait to see where you will take it. Keep moving, keep believing, and above all, keep doing. This is your journey. Make it count. I believe in you.